And that's basically because it's a 2-hour trip to get a prescription.
Aren't you going to listen to it? Aren't you going to listen to it?
Sorry. Yeah, so it can be 2 hours to fetch each prescription, so we just ask for as much notice as possible. And the information advice, that's given on a range of local services, like I said. How does the hub identify needs in the local area? And that's through partner organisations, Walsall Council, social workers, WHG, housing organisations, our own community work and local knowledge and promotions. For anybody that, you know, has any information, we welcome that so that we're hitting everybody that needs the help in the East. How can the voluntary community sector refer clients to the hub? It's really easy. Just pick up the phone and give us a call. As soon as we've got that person's details, we will move forward with that and the support will be implemented immediately. What do the hubs do with vulnerable people after providing support with them? We keep in touch. We don't stop. We make regular calls. We have around 30 volunteers who are making calls every day and they feed back any issues to Manor Farm. And then the last question that Dave put to us was, what role can the wider voluntary community sector play in supporting this work? And there's a number of ways. Keep us informed of what's going on in the East so that we can disseminate the information. Refer people in who require regular interaction and or emergency support. Pass our information to the community contacts and spread the word. And just keep talking. We're always interested in how we can work together. And we've been working with lots of organisations across the East. But if you've got ideas, share them, and somehow I'm sure we can make them work.
Okay, Sue, thank you very much for that. If anybody's got any questions for Sue, can they type it in using the chat facility as I described earlier, please? And then, so have we got any questions at all, Dee?
No, not at the moment. I'll let you know if we do. So again, just to explain how this process is working, as the chat is working, I'll be checking on the chat and my colleague Amy as well, and we'll just be responding to those questions throughout the presentation. And then if there are questions afterwards, we will be sending out this presentation via email on our website, etc. So you'll have access to this presentation and the recording, as we said earlier. I think just a point to make absolutely clear, just in case people are wondering what the hubs are, we didn't clarify right at the start that this is formed out of the Making Connections Walsall hubs that were set up for the social prescribing model. I think it was a couple of years ago now, wasn't it, Sue, or 2 or 3 years ago? And so the council have used this model as a kind of ready model, ready to go to respond to the community needs. So a couple of questions that have just come through from Ruth Noak. Is there anything that maps out each of the locality hubs so we know which areas are included in which hub? Yes, we can send that out to you. So we can send that out with the presentation to include North, South, East and West. We've had a question from Gail Lewis. Could the postcodes for Manor Farm and the phone number be shared, please? Yes, we can do that. And Sue, we can do that. Do you have the postcodes to hand as to the entire area you cover?
No, it's just the particular areas, not postcoded.
Okay, okay. So again, we can help clarify that to a certain degree, and we'll certainly share the phone number. Brilliant work, Sue, Carol and the team. How confident are you about people do not fall between the cracks and gaps? Sue, I don't know whether you want to answer that and we can come in on some thoughts.
See, I'd love to sit here and say I'm absolutely confident, but this is brand new and it's in its very initial stages. We've been running the hub for 4 weeks, yeah. 5 weeks. So I wouldn't be confident actually, but I think the more we work together, we'll get rid of any gaps and cracks that there are. We're doing a lot of work with social care, and more recently in the last 2 weeks where we're getting some referrals for people that perhaps would have fell through the net because they wouldn't have had access to the information. So the information is spreading out, but I think the more we can all work together, those gaps will decrease, but I cannot be totally confident.
And so, yes, that was a question from John. And I think Sue's right in saying that obviously any model, whether new or longer established, is never going to be 100% confident that it can reach out to everyone. We supplied the council with 200 of our volunteers that signed up via our portal to support with leaflet drops right across the borough. And those leaflets included the information on how to contact the hubs and the main contact number for that. So we're hoping that the messages are getting out there via several mediums, not only the IT mediums, websites, etc., and social media. I think the other thing to mention, of course, is that, and I know Sarah Oakley from the council is on the course, that there are multiple meetings going on every week, which are a mix of stakeholders, and everyone within those meetings is looking at the most vulnerable clients on their list, shielded patients, etc., to ensure that those patients or clients are given priority in terms of what is needed and what is kind of sent out to them. And the hubs link very closely in with all that. Sarah, did you want to add anything into that?
Yeah, no, I agree. You know, we as an authority, we did a mass leaflet distribution last week and the start of the week before. You know, on social media, you know, we're using links with our neighbourhood watches, with our resident groups, you know, and through our locality manager as well. You know, he's making contact with different groups that he's aware of. So leads in different, sorry, noise in the background, leads within different groups. You know, we're talking to them constantly as well, you know, spreading the word, sharing the information about the hub. So, you know, we don't want anybody to be missed, and we are working with Adam Social Care with regards to the shielded groups. If people are, if we've not been able to make contact with them or they've not had a delivery, you know, we're working with Adam Social Care to make contact with those individuals as well. So, you know, as Sue says, we don't want anybody to miss the cracks, and, you know, it's going to be that word of mouth, residents, you know, contacting the local neighbours is what we're encouraging as well. You know, having that really good neighbourhood feel, and checking on the people that we know.
Okay, thanks, Sarah. And sorry, Dave, there was a question from one of our own team, Amy. What capacity is there at the moment? Was that to man a farm, Amy, specifically? Yeah. So I suppose the question is, so is your capacity up, you know, at its fullest at the moment, or do you still have capacity? Or
yeah, sure. That I can be confident on is that we're really fortunate. I mean, I mentioned there that we've got 45 volunteers currently working, and the reason why we had to sort of put a halt on the volunteering is that to manage the volunteers, and we had sufficient for the demand. Now, I know that we can call on One Walsall for more volunteers when we need them, and I know that there's other people out there that want to volunteer. So our capacity, we have more capacity, and for us that would never be an issue because we could pull people back if needs be. So there is no capacity issue for us, and I know that Sarah works brilliantly at getting boxes to us, so there's no capacity issues from our end at all.
Okay,
We
thank
just
you.
increase.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Okay.
Lovely.
Ruth, sorry, it just sounds like a great approach. John, are you sharing capacity demand levels across all 4 hubs? I'm pretty sure that is happening kind of formally and informally across the hubs, both between the council, Sarah Oakley and Paul Gordon, and yourself, Sue, and the other hubs. Is that true to say?
Yeah, so we're constantly in communication with all the hubs, you know, offering them advice, support, you know, constantly saying, you know, if you do need One Walsall volunteers, you know, we've got they're available, they're ready. So yeah, that communication is daily, and we're keeping an eye on that as well.
And a question from President Kuram: is there a cohorted attempt to communicate with all 4 localities? Again, I would say that there's, and again, Sarah, correct me if I'm wrong, that actually within the localities, there's communication from the locality managers. The hubs themselves are communicating with their local organisations and their local communities. From a perspective in One Walsall, where we always say there's room for improvement in communication, then yes, I would say that could be true across the localities anyway. But there is a lot of communication out there about this. I don't know whether you wanted to add anything to that.
Yes, so so I'd say the hub leads themselves have got great relationships with each other. We've got relationships with them as an authority as well, and that includes the Accord Age Matters who work with in the south. So the relationships that we've got between the groups, between the council, it means that any issues which do arise, then they're easily resolved, and we can support each other and they support each other with, as we say, this is a new process, this is new for us, so we're learning as we go, as are they, so they're sharing different suggestions, they're in different ways of working, what's worked for them, and so yeah, that communication is vital, and it's really working well. Would you agree, Sue?
Yeah, definitely. And I think just to add to that, we're working with lots of organisations around the East that are already set up, that are supporting the hub, with people we haven't worked with before, and just that real community feel, and different organisations of all sizes coming together just to make a difference. It's really working well. We're always keen to work with more people, so if anybody wants to get in touch with us, that's great.
Okay, thanks, Sue.
And also kind of in from different localities as well. We've got in groups from the south who are wanting to come over and work in an area and support the a different locality area. So even though we're seeing that really good cohesion and that mix of groups coming together, which we'd maybe not seen as much in the past, but this has really opened really brilliant opportunities, so that's really
absolutely positive. And the final question, I think, before we move on to the next slides, otherwise we're going to be short on time. Ruth has asked if we can share contact details for the hub leaders of all 4 hubs. Yes, we can, Ruth, and we'll do that after the meeting sometime today or tomorrow.
Okay, lovely.
Oh, sorry, Dave. Actually, John Maltman has just asked, will these 4 hubs form the basis for the council's resilient communities model moving forward? I can't answer that, but I think what we are saying is that actually, in terms of resilient communities, what we've been seeing over the last 5-6 weeks in terms of the response to COVID-19 across the borough, not only with the hub work, but with the volunteering response that Dave will come on to talk about, is this is resilient communities at its best. This is what working in co-production partnership is actually happening by design, simply as a result of this current situation. I think what we want to do is kind of galvanize this moving forward to ensure we don't lose this momentum of what we're doing now. So I think it's a horrendous time for everyone, but actually there's some real positives we can hopefully take out of this. Sorry, Dave, I will let you move on now.
Okay, right, thank you. Right, so before we move on to some more material slides, just a quick update from One Walsall. So you've already heard quite a bit from Dee Litton. Now Dee's taken over from Alex, and she's our new interim chief exec. So Dee, you've already said quite a bit, but do you want to just explain yourself and the new role?
Explain myself, Dave. I can't. what am I doing here? Okay. For those of you who don't know me, I joined One Walsall last July as partnership manager, and I stepped into this interim CEO role to provide some continuity for the organisation, both internally and externally during this period. I've worked in the borough for over 10 years now. I was previously CEO of Age UK Walsall, so it's just providing that point of continuity, just to make it absolutely clear, I am not going for the permanent role. That is not my interest. I'm quite happy to step back down after this, but happy just to support at this moment in time. So thank you. Thanks, Dave.
Okay, and next we've got a new position for One Walsall. So we've now got a dedicated funding officer, Lighton Alabi. So Lighton, if you want to just say hello.
Hi everyone, Lighton Alabi, new funding officer for One Walsall. Hi, nice to meet you all. I will be here. I am here now to help with any funding queries and funding applications. I have a background working with funders, and that would be the kind of experience you would be seeing from me here.
Thanks, Lighton. We've still got Amy and Colin, so don't worry, we haven't lost them. They're still with us supporting So just to explain, all our staff are now working from home, but by using Zoom, telephone and email, essentially we're able to deliver the same range of services as when we were based in Bridge Street. So, you know, please use us still. I would say that we've had to prioritise some of our work due to the impact of COVID-19, and in particular, we've prioritised work around supporting the recruitment of volunteers. And primarily at the moment, we're working with those organisations who are most impacted by the virus. But as we get through the existing sort of rush of issues, we'll be back to sort of normal in the next few months. So please access us, we're still here. So what I want to talk about now is our work around volunteer recruitment. So essentially when the lockdown came, we were linked up with the council, and we said to the council that we will go out and promote and sort of recruit volunteers, recognising that volunteers would be a key part of the response to COVID-19. As at the 22nd of April, we'd actually registered 619 volunteers, which I must admit is fantastic. And you know, I wasn't expecting anything like this, but it just shows that, you know, in the times of crisis, the people of Walsall, however much they might be criticised outside, people of Walsall come forward and, you know, prove themselves to be really, really community focused. So it's really, really encouraging. So what we've done as a process is make sure that all our volunteers are security checked before they're passed out to organisations, and that can be either through a DBS or a police national computer check. And everybody is also identified and their address is confirmed. So from the data you can see here, we've registered 619 volunteers. We've had ID received for 222, 55 are currently being sent for PNC checks. We've had 71 clear PNC checks received back. We've currently got 222 volunteers ready for placement, and we've already placed 258. So fantastic sort of response from the public. And I suppose my big ask for everyone is that having got these people come forward to volunteer, the last thing we want to do is let them go without having had the opportunity of benefiting from the experience of volunteering. So just something for you to think about, where you've got projects that maybe, and Sue mentioned about befriending, where maybe you've got befriending projects where they ring people up once a week. You know, could you consider maybe ringing people up twice a week, particularly people who are shielded? They might feel that once a week may not be enough in the current climate, and use some of these volunteers to bridge that gap. As I say, you know, people, if they don't, I think if they don't get the placement now, we may never get them back again. So this is a one and only opportunity to actually increase the capacity of the volunteer base in the borough. So I'll just talk you through the One Walsall volunteering process so that you know, and if you know anybody who's interested in volunteering, you can pinpoint them to this. So basically they access the volunteering application through the One Walsall website, and you go on to tab through the page, and there's a bit that says for those who want to volunteer, those who want to support the work going on. So if they click on that link, it takes them to a SurveyMonkey application form. So they fill in the application form. Those people who've already got a DBS, all we ask from them is confirmation of ID and their address. For those people who haven't got a DBS, then the survey will take them to a couple of questions that they need to fill in to do a police national computer check. And this is a check similar to DBS checks, so it just checks if they're on the police records. So once we've got all the information back from them, the ID and everything, we'll send it to the police, and they're currently sort of processing around about 10 requests a day. And then once they've come back clear from the police, then they're then ready to place. We'll go on to the next slide. And these are kind of activities that we're sort of placing people in. So we've placed a few people in community care settings, although not directly providing care themselves. So predominantly in this sort of respect, they'd probably be doing shopping for people and things like that. Again, we've provided workers for health settings. And a lot of the things that they've been doing are things like running around with hospital records and so on, so that information sort of gets around the hospital faster. And hospital staff who maybe did that before can be doing other things that may be more related to the care of patients. We've got quite a few
Dave,
people who are...
I think
Sorry?
someone has their hand up. Someone's got their hand up to ask a question.
Okay. Shall I just go to the end of the slides and we'll take all the questions then? Because I can't see anybody at the moment. I can't see any of the questions or anything. We'll come back in a sec. We've got people who are volunteering to do driving. So that's dropping off and collecting basic supplies for vulnerable people. General support, so volunteers are doing packaging of foods. I know at the new county council centre at Sneed, there's a number of volunteers there packing food parcels. And finally, what I just talked about is the telephone remote befriending, so providing that regular contact with isolated people and providing social engagement.
Okay, so a couple of the questions, John Maltman, I haven't forgotten your earlier question. It relates back to the hubs. You mentioned about the resilient communities, John, but you also said, where does the funding come from? Now, the Making Connections Walsall hubs, as I said earlier, have been actually in operation for a number of years. And I think I'm right in saying that the current funding goes up until June, July. So that was funding already in the system. It was mainly via the council, via public health. So it was just utilising a model that was already in existence. Obviously, if the situation goes on longer beyond June and contracts need to be extended, that would be a conversation between public health and the Making Connections Walsall hubs, I presume. Sue, I don't know whether you wanted to say anything on that. You're on mute, Sue. Sorry.
Yeah, it is currently funded by Walsall Council.
Yeah. And the other question from yourself, John, was do you have a One Walsall table for demands, needs requested for help, the converse to the table for volunteers? Yes, we do. Dave's going to come on to other areas of the website where you can place requests. Also, we have emails directly into our staff, Sarah Taylor, who's currently overseeing the volunteering situation. And we have just a simple Excel spreadsheet you can fill out with your requests in terms of what you need, and we will then look to place the relevant volunteers with yourselves. What we essentially look for are volunteers, hopefully within the same area as you're asking for volunteer support with, if it's out and about in the community. If it's telephone befriending, that can obviously be done by anyone, anywhere, but we look to match the skills that people have signed up for to what's requested. Okay, thank you. Thanks, Dave.
Okay, so just the last slide on the volunteering, just how to access volunteers. So you can email us at volunteering@onewalsall.org. The key information we need to know from you is how many volunteers you need, when you need the volunteers, and the activities that you're looking for them to do. Based on that information, then we can match them up with the best sort of people that we've got. I would just say that for anybody that sort of takes volunteers, it is a new sort of thing. And what we're finding is that some volunteers are placed and then don't like the organisation or the work they're being asked to do, and vice versa. Some organisations are getting volunteers that don't end up as good as they might be. If that is the case, then we're quite happy to try and replace volunteers if they're not happy with what they're being asked to do. And equally for organisations who get a volunteer that maybe isn't what they thought, isn't useful to them, then come back to us and we'll find you somebody else. Whilst we're making sure none of these people are high risk for working with vulnerable people, what we can't talk about is their quality. So there is an element of, suck it and see, really. We can place the volunteer. If it works for you, fantastic. If it doesn't, let the volunteer go and come back to us and we can find you somebody else.
So just a couple of other questions, Dave. One question from Mish. How many food parcels has the East Locality delivered since the start of the crisis?
Yeah, we average at around 25 a day, and it's on about 600 and odd that we've sent out so far.
Fantastic, thanks, Sue. And a question from yourself, Sue, is that the biggest issue is around pharmacies and delivery of prescriptions. have pharmacists come on board with taking on volunteers. Do you mean, just for clarity, do you mean accepting the fact that volunteers are going to be picking up prescriptions, or taking on their own volunteers?
Taking on their own volunteers. Like, we get requests to go and pick them up, but when we're there's mountains of them behind there, and for me, it would be great if someone was just there to pick them up and go and take them out.
Yeah,
for speed.
Yeah, we've started conversations with some of the pharmacies and trying to do this via the PCN network as well. It hasn't got that far to date, but we are continuing with that conversation. So hopefully something will shift in the near future. Because what we're finding is, as I'm sure you are, that volunteers are just spending ages queuing to get the prescriptions, etc. So we're almost looking for volunteers who can queue for hours on end, which can be soul destroying. But yeah, we're trying to progress those conversations.
I mean, just one of the things I don't think I mentioned earlier is that before a volunteer is, or when we place a volunteer, before they arrive at the organisation they've been placed with, we will send you name badges for those volunteers. So, you know, I think moving forward with the pharmacies, the fact that we're offering all our volunteers name badges might offer additional sort of security for anybody who's handing out medicines to somebody that maybe they don't know.
Yeah. There's another question from Mish. In comparison to other hubs in Walsall, I'm assuming Manor Farm is quieter than the others. I think so, due to the demography. Is this a correct assumption? How is the hub doing for stock for food parcels?
Sarah will probably want to come in on this, and I don't know how we are in compared to other hubs, but the East actually covers a big proportion of Walsall, so it's a very large area that we're dealing with. In terms of food for parcels, now that the council have took on the direct purchasing of the free food parcels, it's so much better, so much easier, and it's so easy for us to get the boxes of stock. We just simply request it. So if we need 45, we send an email and 45 are here by the next day. So in terms of stock, we're doing really well and there's no issues.
Sarah, I don't know whether you wanted to, sorry, thanks.
Yeah, no, it's okay. It's just, so Manor Farm obviously is in the East locality, and there's a lot more people, older people who live in the East. So there's more people who are in isolation. So it's not necessarily regarding, you know, them wanting the free food parcels. It could be other support that's needed. So whether it is to do with the befriending or whether it's helping with specific shopping requests. So yeah, in comparison, you know, there's no massive differences in the areas. It's just the demands are maybe a bit different in each area, locality area.
Thank you. Thanks, Dave.
Okay, so we'll move on. I mentioned earlier that One Walsall's providing lots of information to support groups around the current coronavirus crisis. One of the things that we've got on our website, if you go onto www.onewalsall.org, is a real-time activity database. So what we're trying to capture here is what organisations are sort of doing at the current time, what support they may need, and what support they can offer to other groups. So this is a Google database. The first page you come onto is just some information about how you enter data on the database and how you can search the database. Because if you're looking for, say, an organisation who does befriending, you can actually just do a search for befriending and it'll come up with a list of all those organisations who are providing that service. So that's the first thing you'll come to, the information bit. And then this is the actual database itself. So we're asking basic things for you to fill in. So the organisation name, your name, the kind of work that you're doing, the areas that you're doing the work in, when the sort of work's available. Give me 1 second. Your email address and any support that might be required or any support that you can offer. So some organisations, for instance, have, because they changed the nature of their service, have got staff who are free, or maybe volunteers they've already got who are no longer used. So, you know, they're quite willing to offer their volunteers or some of their staff to support other organisations, so they can put the information on the database and somebody else can come along and have a look and make contact with them and link up. So it's a very easy way of telling people what you're doing, and if you need support at a particular time, or you can offer support, put the details on there. Hopefully somebody will find it and they can get in touch with you. And it helps make everybody more joined up. It's a very easy way of doing it. And it's just an ordinary sort of spreadsheet. You just fill the information in yourself. So everybody's got access to it. You don't have to go through One Walsall. All I'd ask is that people are careful when they use it, that they don't delete all the information that's already there, because we haven't got a copy to redo it. So just a little bit more about collecting up-to-date information around COVID-19. I mean, it's a real challenge because I'm sure, as you see on the news, information coming out of government changes virtually on a daily basis. So to begin with, we were like collating all the information coming out sort of virtually every day, putting it on the website. But we recognised very quickly that information was out of date virtually before probably anybody had a chance to have a look at it. So now we're just focusing on 2 key websites in a way to make sure the information you are getting is up to date. So we're providing links to the gov.uk website, and that's the government website. It's got lots of information, including stuff on the furloughing of staff, emergency funding, grants available to businesses to keep them viable during the shutdown. And I think with regard to this, you need to see yourselves as small businesses. So when the government talks about small businesses, that is the voluntary sector. So stuff that's available to small businesses, you can access yourselves. Obviously, we're here to help. So if you need any help sort of understanding some of this stuff, if you're not sure, by all means, contact us and we can help you with that. The other link that we've got on there for everyone is the National Council for Voluntary Organisations. They're a national organisation who support voluntary sector groups. And they've got a whole host of information which they update on a very regular basis. And there's stuff on there, including protecting staff, volunteers and beneficiaries, contingency planning, and understanding the financial implications of COVID-19. So again, a very useful website to refer to if you've got any sort of issues that you're not quite sure how to take forward and you want to have a quick reference to see if there's something there. So are there any more questions, Dee, at the moment?
On mute. Jan, can I just explain about the business grants if you're claiming rate relief? Yeah.
Yeah. Can you hear me? Yeah.
Thank you, Jan. Yeah.
Yeah. I didn't realise until yesterday that as community organisations we can claim the business grant as long as we're claiming the rate relief.
Right.
I had a phone call through from Walsall Council, and we found out the rate relief numbers, and you can claim it on every premise that you've got as long as it's not being used through the COVID-19. Yeah.
Okay. Right.
So I went through the support group yesterday, the support line, and they actually talked me through really how to do the claim. Once you get on, actually, it's quite easy, but it's knowing which one to go into. But I think there may be a lot of business community organisations out there who think they're not able to claim it. So it's just to confirm really that, you know, as long as you're claiming small relief rates, then you can claim it.
That's fantastic. Thanks, Jan. That's really helpful. Thank you. Thank you. So I think just to add to that, obviously Dave was pointing you to the 2 main websites, which is absolutely right. We have got the useful web links tab on our website, which as we speak is being kind of reconfigured because it's becoming too clunky, too clumsy. It's got so much information on there. Lighton's got the unenviable task of looking through that and bringing it up to date on a weekly basis, and we are going to make it more user friendly moving forward. But we quickly learned that, you know, there's so much information coming through that to put it out in a manageable way just needs a bit of alteration on our part. So by the end of the week that should be sorted. Thank you.
Okay, so Lighton, would you like to talk around the funding slides?
Hi. So Hi everyone, sorry.
Hello.
So we're talking about the funding. As Dee has mentioned, we do have the useful links updated for funding, and that would be very helpful for anyone seeking funds. I try to update that every once a week, but bear with us while we fix it. Currently, the funding arrangements we have is that for most funders, business as usual has been suspended. So business as usual funding has been suspended, and everyone is prioritizing the outbreak, providing support and funding for the outbreak. The links for the main funders supporting outbreaks can be found on our useful links again. I think after this, I would put up the link there for anyone looking for it. So we're saying that if you've not spoken to your funder, we recommend that you do that as soon as possible, because you don't want to wait until it's a bit too late. It's going to be very competitive, so try and get in there as soon as you can. Most funders have taken a relaxed approach, and they've allowed fund holders, existing fund holders, to make changes to the projects so that they can respond to the COVID-19. Next slide, please. Thank you. In terms of the funding headlines, the major one would be the government's release for 750 million support package for the coronavirus outbreak. Out of this, 370 million would be for small and medium-sized charities. And a definition of that would probably be those with incomes under £1 million income, and the grants are likely to be £100,000. This should be executed through the National Lottery Community Fund. And while we don't have full details of the criteria, that should be coming in by next week, when we'll be able to say what exactly will determine access to funds. Next slide, please. National Lottery Community Fund as well have £300 million to spend over the next 6 months. They'll be devoting this to coronavirus, and they'll be prioritizing activities for supporting communities through the crisis. And Heart of England Community Foundation as well would be providing some sort of support as well, but they will be prioritizing people with groups that deal with food banks and social eating projects. The income limit for this program is 250,000, and again, the advice is to try and get into this as soon as possible. The groups they're prioritizing are listed on the slides, if you can see, but they're not limited to those. But I think the main message here is all these major funders are mostly just focusing on the outbreak, on supporting the outbreak. Next slide, please. And we also have the Heritage Emergency Fund, which we have put aside £50 million fund, and grants available around £3,000 and £50,000. And this will cover quite a few heritage sort of organizations or projects. And I think I had a meeting with one of them today where, a contact from Heritage, where they try to define what heritage is. And to be honest, it can be quite a lot of things. So if you're not quite sure if you fall into heritage or art or anything, I mean, just always I'm here. You can just run it by me, and if I'm not sure, I can always speak to them as well. I mean, if you can see the slide, it also covers gardens, landscapes, nature. It's quite a whole wide variety of what falls under heritage. And the encouragement is just to, if you're not sure, ask rather than assume you're not covered and let the funding go past. There would be priorities to people who I would say have no other options in terms of support, and where heritage is most at risk, and where the organization is at risk of any severe financial crisis due to the outbreak. So again, please note, the priority will be given to people affected by the outbreak. And I think, any questions?
Thank you for that, Lighton. I think I'll come back to a couple of questions on the chat in just a second. I think it's important to note that, as Lighton has emphasised, be ready for when this funding comes out, especially the one by the National Lottery, because everyone will be scrambling over themselves to access this funding. We keep saying that the landscape for the charity sector, for the business sector, for every sector is changing beyond all recognition. We are going to lose charities along the way, without a doubt, and the landscape after lockdown will look very different to what it is now. And that'll be charities of all shapes and sizes, not just the smaller ones with the smaller turnover. And so if you can start thinking and planning now for how you could best utilise the funding that will be on offer, regardless of a lack of clarity at the moment, then the more quickly you can get off the ground. And obviously One Walsall's development team and Lighton are there to support you with that. We are in constant discussions with the national organisations, as again Lighton referred to, such as NAVCA, who themselves are in conversation with central government. I myself had a meeting with Eddie Hughes MP for North Walsall a week or so ago, and was just stressing the need for clarity on the funding and for the funding to come through as soon as possible. What we're hearing is that although you can furlough staff, you've still got your overheads of rent and everything else. So that's an issue if your funding is stopping or falling through the floor. And what also is the issue, which NAVCA, etc., are really pressing the government on, is if you furlough staff, those staff can't volunteer for your organisation, and that's an issue that is constantly being driven home. And where that conversation goes, who knows? But just going back to a couple of questions on the slide, and apologies if we miss any, we can always follow up at a later date. Mish was asking a question, it goes back to the hubs and referrals. Other than self-referrals and existing vulnerable people, is there a plan coming from the council for the hubs to reach out to those who aren't accessing help and are falling through the cracks? I think we did talk about that to some degree earlier, in terms of the council with the list of shielded people they have on their books, with Sue and her team, and the outreach to all the organisations that they work with to ensure that they reach as many people as possible, is an ongoing piece of work. And there will undoubtedly be people who are falling through the cracks, and that's when we're looking at the kind of resilient communities model, for communities to inform us by the hubs, by whichever means they can get those referrals into their local organisations, to ensure those people get support. Again, Sue, I don't know whether you wanted to add anything to that.
And I think what's added to that in a positive way is just the leaflet drop that the council have done, just to get it out there to individual homes. So not only are we having all the self-referrals from every department we can possibly think of, we're having and then vulnerable people coming through, there's also that opportunity to hit people that we perhaps wouldn't see.
Thanks, Sue. Absolutely. A question from John Maltman: has there been any funding coming from from Walsall Council from central government grants for COVID? The council is. Oh, Sarah, sorry, I've forgotten you were in the room. You'll be best to answer that. I do apologise.
So the council has received some financial support from the government, which is helping us with the main hub scheme and supporting us with our food and other projects. I haven't got the finer details of that, but we'll be able to provide that at a later date.
Okay, and the central monies coming through to the charity sector will be in the form of that 720 million and the 370 million for the smaller charities. So again, where that is processed through the National Lottery Community Fund, then we'll be sending out those details as soon as we have more clarity on that, and that will be via our website and via social media. But please pick up the phone to us or email us if you want anything else. There's someone, sorry, just called iPhone, do apologise. Send the emergency funding link, please. I'm not, sorry Dave, I'm not actually quite sure which emergency funding that is. Does anyone?
Let's go back on the slide.
I had assumed it was the heritage one.
Oh, okay, yep.
Yeah, I was just about to send it to them.
Sorry,
because that's the one.
That's fine. Yeah, we'll put that on the chat. That's fine.
All right.
Okay, thanks, Dave.
Okay. Right, just move on now to the last question. So I suppose finally, to everybody out there, it's about over to you now. So what we need to know from you is what are the biggest challenges that you're facing at the moment? And that could be in terms of supporting service users who maybe are no longer able to access your services. And I think in saying that, it's about recognising that this lockdown may not be quite as stringent as it is at the moment for long, but I've no doubt there will be a lockdown going on for months and months to come. So the impact on service users, whilst it may not be great at the moment, will, I'm sure, increase over time. And you know, if you're not able to access or provide services to your service users at the moment, it's about what is happening in the future, and is there something that you could do to enable them to be engaged with, thinking creatively, thinking with IT, maybe thinking outside IT. But they may be challenges that we can help you with. Capacity due to new ways of working and social distancing. So particularly where we've got social groups who may have come together regularly in the past, it might mean that somebody's got to ring up 20 people. Well, that might not be possible for one person to do on a regular basis. So again, it's, do we need to help you with volunteers to help do some of that work to keep people engaged? And finally, around funding and finance loss of income generation activities. So those organisations who maybe hired out rooms in their buildings, or whose activities are based around generating it, or who have, say, restaurants, whatever, cafes, generate income. That's no longer possible at the moment. It may be not possible for some time to come. So again, it's thinking about the long-term impact of those. And I suppose the thing that we're saying is, you need to be responding and looking at those implications now. What we found in the past is a lot of organisations will leave it till it's almost too late, and then they'll come looking for support. And I think in the current climate, with the likely competition for funding and resources at the moment, if that's the case, it probably will be too late. So what we would ask everybody to do is come forward if you recognise that you might have a potential issue, even if it's 6 months down the line. We need to be having those discussions now and looking at the options available to you and how you might sort of make those changes that need to be made to make your organisations more viable. So I see there's a few questions coming forward. I can't see the questions, but
no, Amy just asked a very sensible question. If everyone's happy for them, for their details to be shared, their contact details to be shared. So I think most people are replying. If you don't, just put it up on the chat, and we'll take your name off the list. I think what Dave was saying there, and what we've alluded to throughout this kind of presentation, is the changing landscape of society in general once we come out of lockdown. And don't want to get this too dark too quickly, but things are going to be very different. In meetings we have with the police on a regular basis, we're very mindful that domestic abuse referrals are down at the moment, but actually post-lockdown those referrals could potentially really surge. Safeguarding issues for vulnerable adults, vulnerable children, what's going on behind closed doors at the moment will probably come to light post-lockdown, and a lot of the services that the voluntary sector deliver are really key in supporting people from those kind of groups. And if it's about being creative with how you work at the moment and thinking potentially to what those needs might be post-lockdown, then actually that's something that you could start thinking about when you're applying for funding, not only now but in the future, and planning for service delivery moving forward. And I know all that sounds very difficult at a time when we're basically responding to a crisis, but mental health is something that can be affecting a lot of people now and may come to the fore even more post-lockdown. So it's about looking at what your services are currently doing, potentially what you could do moving forward, and trying to build in some kind of plan for not only now but the future as well. And as Dave quite rightly says, when people come to us at the very last minute asking for funding, we haven't got magic hands. We can only do what we can do with the resources available. And so the earlier you come to us for support, hopefully the more we can do. Dave, over to you. Thank you.
right, okay. So can I just take this opportunity to thank you all for bearing with us over the last 55 minutes. I hope you found it useful. If you have any comments to make, please make them so that we can learn from this. This is only our second virtual forum, so we do hope to do more of these in the future. This may well be the way of working for the foreseeable future, and if these work really well into the longer term as well. And I think in future as well, we might be looking at doing some themed forums. So we may work with, or may have a forum around, say, domestic abuse or isolation befriending, mental health. So, whilst this is a locality based one, we might have some themed ones as well, depending on sort of demand and interest from you. So please tell us what you think, if you think this has worked, if you think this has been useful. And all I can say is stay safe and all the best, and we'll see you again soon.
Thanks, Sue, for your help as well. Thank you. And Carol.
Yeah, thank you, Sue and Carol.
Thank you.
Take care. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye,
Bye-bye.
everyone.
Bye.
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 Bye.